Leon, Telesur.
Bolivia's Senate agrees on new elections and the repeal of Decree 478. Colombian authorities impose a curfew as police continue to violently repress protesters. And it's set, Ethiopia's Sidama ethnic group votes to form self-governing region. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. The United Nations, European Union and Bolivian Episcopal Conference have announced an agreement between the movement towards socialism and the de facto government to hold new elections in Bolivia. The Senate voted unanimously for the resolution in a plenary session this Saturday. It will now go to the lower house for debate. The decision seeks to overcome the current crisis, ensure respect for human rights, promote dialogue, and ensure timely elections. President Evo Morales and his Vice President Alvaro Garcia Linera are not allowed to participate. Meanwhile, the illegal government has repealed Decree 478, which gave impunity to armed forces who violently repressed and killed protesters.
The parliament wants quick preparations for the new elections to allow citizens to choose their leaders. The mediation board that has been called by the Bolivian Episcopal Conference with support from the European Union and the United Nations have facilitated this agreement. We have been in extended meetings every day, and I want to highlight the maturity and generosity of the political actors and the Senate who have managed to come to an unanimous consensus. Without doubt, this is the first step for Bolivia to get back on track and to sustain democracy towards free, transparent and inclusive elections as soon as possible. Just like the United Nations, the European Union will offer all of its support. Bolivia is our main partner in Latin America, and in these difficult times, the European Union will make an additional effort to offer its support in any way possible.
Meanwhile, Senator for the Mass Party, Milton Barron, said the authorities sworn into the Supreme Electoral Court by the de facto government ought not to select the day for the upcoming elections.
According to the Constitution and Law 018, the election day must be chosen by the new electoral body. Now, it's the Plurinational Legislative Assembly's job to select the members of the Supreme Electoral Court, because they're the ones to call elections on the day they see fit. This is what is outlined in Bolivia's constitution.
On Thursday, Bolivian police fired tear gas at coffin bearers in La Paz. Our correspondent, Freddie Morales, was there and has the story.
They came from El Alto to La Paz carrying some of their dead, the victims of a police and military operation to retake the Sencata fuel distribution depot. They asked the soldiers for permission to pass, and it was granted. But the police were waiting just behind and attacked at point-blank range. The attack came out of the blue. Nobody thought a funeral procession would be repressed. For a moment, the coffins lay abandoned. Then the relatives returned, while the police ordered them to leave. They gathered their dead again and fled through clouds of tear gas.
They have no pity, no mercy. Mothers, grandmothers, children are fainting there. That's the dictatorship we have now.
This is a dictatorship, and we are the people. They mutinied because they were paid, and we cannot pay them.
Several people fainted from the gas. This young woman had to be taken away by ambulance. She was with the coffin of her murdered brother.
They're killing people. We don't want to die anymore.
How can they do this to us? They are going to kill more people.
How can that be? Are we dogs to be killed like that?
For goodness sake, stop killing us and our brothers. They won't let us pass. At least, respect the coffins and the dead. We are peaceful. We are just accompanying our death.
The police repression cleared the main avenue of La Paz, but a few blocks away it continued, and they arrested people, mainly young protesters, even as Telesur was reporting live. Here they're asking for international help to defend human rights.
The Human Rights Committee is asking for a commission of national and international observers and human rights organizations to be set up, because we already know of 34 people killed, more than 1,000 wounded, and a similar number arrested.
A report by the Ombudsman's Office for La Paz has confirmed that many of those arrested have been submitted to torture.
Authorities have imposed a curfew in Colombia's capital, Bogota, after police clashed with protesters overnight. Security forces fired tear gas and water cannons at hundreds of peaceful demonstrators who were unarmed and beating pans. This comes as 3 people were killed on Thursday and 122 injured, while more than 250,000 marched in a national strike to express growing discontent with President Ivan Duque's government. They're upset over neoliberal economic reforms and a lack of government action to stop corruption and the murders of human rights activists.
And here for the same reason all Colombians are here. We are tired of Mr. Duque, and we are tired of Mr. Uribe. They are a pair of liars. They never do what they are going to do. It's the worst government since I can remember.
There are more good people, as our neighbors say, than bad. We are protecting our property, our family, our neighbors, and that's the most important thing.
Meanwhile, the streets of Bogota had a strong military presence despite authorities' announcement that the curfew would end at 5 a.m. This video shows heavily armed forces patrolling the city while patrons carried on with normal activities. Shifting gears now, Dominica's Foreign Minister Francine Barron slammed the OAS for meddling in the Caribbean islands' internal affairs while she defended the integrity of Dominica's electoral process. Addressing a special meeting of the organization's Permanent Council in Washington a short while, or rather on Friday, Barron expressed serious concern over recent statements made by the OAS chief supporting the demands of Dominica's opposition for electoral reform ahead of the December 6th elections. Dominica's foreign minister told the OAS that its Secretary General's statements reeked of bias as he sought to prejudge Dominica's electoral process. As such, Barron called on the organization to refrain from making such prejudicial statements as she assured that Dominica will hold free and fair elections.
We have had the occasion to be concerned about actions or decisions taken by the OAS on certain matters which depart from what we consider to be established practice and which we think calls into question whether the OAS Charter and the rules of the organization are being breached. We are equally concerned by public pronouncements that have been made by the Secretary General, which displays bias, disregard for governments of member states, and which calls into question his role and by question the organization's role as an honest broker. We expect from this organization that when statements are made on behalf of the membership or by the directing mind of this organization, that it will be fair and balanced, having regard to all of the facts.
Now, several OAS member states expressed solidarity with Dominica, among them Nicaragua, whose permanent representative to the OAS delivered a message of support.
The Republic of Nicaragua condemns the efforts coming from abroad to intervene in the domestic political life of Dominica, affecting the peace and encouraging violence, so as to destabilize the electoral process, which historically has been carried out in a peaceful and participatory fashion.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
In Chile, social movements and unions have met to debate proposals for upcoming mobilizations and toward a referendum for the country's new constitution. Members of the Central Workers Union say they will join other groups on Monday to demand a constitutional assembly. They've also announced a new national strike set for Tuesday. And a spontaneous protest took place inside one of the largest malls in Santiago. Staff and patrons stood in the halls and chanted, "The people united will never be defeated." Despite the peaceful demonstration, police arrived to control the situation. Talks between the Venezuelan government and the opposition continue moving forward. The most recent step was the creation of a commission to name the members of a new National Electoral Council ahead of parliamentary elections in 2020.
Behind this door, the preliminary committee is meeting to pick the new leaders of the National Electoral Council. And while the radical opposition denies it, this is an achievement of the national dialogue.
There are lawmakers from the main opposition party at the table, as well as from smaller parties. Representatives from all opposition sectors are taking part, as well as members of the ruling party. So even if they want to deny that there's talks, we are sitting down with them and talking. We have all the transcripts from the meetings.
The road to parliamentary elections is being built through these talks.
We worry about some declaration that say we are creating a new electoral court for presidential elections. But that's not true. We've been clear in saying that the next elections in Venezuela are parliamentary.
The radical opposition, which continues to call people out onto the street with the goal of ousting President Nicolas Maduro, is on the way out.
We are seeing how this conflict is being brought back under the rule of law by opposing sides. Meanwhile, a sector of the opposition, led by Juan Guaidó, keeps trying for a coup on the streets, something he's been doing since January and continues to fail at.
Violence failed, as did attempts to reenact the coup in Bolivia.
Venezuelans have the right to express ourselves in peace, to solve our own issues. We don't want more violence. There are opposition sectors that think violence is the answer, that think the crisis will be solved by making it worse. Those of us taking part in the dialogue table are looking for ways out of the crisis. We are looking for mechanisms so the country can take back the time it has lost. For example, the sanctions imposed by the US are the opposite of activating our productive sector.
But the streets speak for themselves. Chavistas mobilized en masse on November 16th, the same day the radical opposition claimed would be the revolution's last.
Trinidad and Tobago's Attorney General has laid two pieces of legislation in Parliament that seek to decriminalize marijuana. They're called the Amendment to the Dangerous Drug Act and the Cannabis Control Bill. The bills seek to decriminalize possession of less than 30 grams of marijuana and to introduce the option of a fixed fine for possession of between 30 and 60 grams. If passed, the law will end the jailing of people for being in possession of small quantities of marijuana. It will also see the expunging of criminal records of people who have been convicted for possessing small quantities of the drug.
Prime Minister today approved for laying tomorrow in the Parliament two pieces of law. One, the amendment to the Dangerous Drugs Act to decriminalize the possession of marijuana and the scourge. And the second piece of law is the Cannabis Control Authority Bill.
Now, Trinidad and Tobago is following the lead of some of its Caribbean neighbors who have already moved to free up their marijuana laws. Jamaica led the charge back in 2015 when it passed the ganja law, which made possession of 2 ounces or less a ticketable offense. And last year, St. Vincent and the Grenadines issued its first cultivation licenses for medicinal marijuana production. St. Kitts and Nevis has passed laws reducing penalties for possession of up to 15 grams, while Antigua and Barbuda is prepping for full legalization, and Barbados is set to join other Caribbean countries as well in approving cannabis cultivation. Over 10,000 people marched in Sao Paulo, Brazil on November 22nd to commemorate Black Awareness Day. This holiday has celebrated Brazil's Afro-descendant population since 2003, when it was established by the government of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Racism dominates the day-to-day of the last country that abolished slavery in the continent. Wages between black and white people in Brazil differ by over 70%, according to official figures. In the past trimester, unemployment grew only among the black population, and in the outskirts of Sao Paulo, the richest city in the country, the life expectancy of white people is 20 years longer than that of black people.
Brazil is a racist country. According to statistics, a black person is killed here every 9 minutes. Life is not easy here.
During the celebration of Black Awareness Day, people recall the implementation of racial quotas by President Lula da Silva 15 years ago. In 2019, for the first time in history, black people are a majority in public universities.
Thanks to the racial quotas, Afro-descendants know there's a place they can occupy. But we also need to take town halls, state governments, and have larger political representation.
But far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has not only diminished the existence of racism. During his campaign, he even said that black people are not even good at procreating.
This is a fascist government. Our goal is to overthrow them. There is no dialogue with authorities. During the campaign, Bolsonaro was honest about his fascist, racist, homophobic, and misogynistic views. There is no dialogue with racists.
The day also marked the second year that Black Awareness Day was celebrated without Marielle Franco. People are still waiting to find out who ordered the murder of the councilwoman. Recent developments allege links between the Bolsonaro family and the 2 killers, who met up before the murder in a place near the current president's home.
We do not believe anything. We think that whosoever killed Marielle is up there, but we cannot make accusations without proof. I think the mastermind of the murder is someone racist, a homophobic anti-Brazilian who does not respect life.
A black person in Brazil is almost 3 times more likely to be murdered than a white person. According to protesters, an anti-crime reform package pushed by Justice Minister Sergio Moro eases the responsibility of the police in cases of murder. On top of this, Bolsonaro has pushed for the loosening of gun laws, something that can only make the statistics worse.
In other news, the Latin American conference Adelante has kicked off in the United Kingdom. The meeting aims to set new agendas and discuss common challenges faced by leaders across the region. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has the details.
Here in the centre of London, hundreds have gathered for the annual Latin America conference, the biggest conference in solidarity with Latin America in Europe. We've heard numerous speakers talk about the need for solidarity with the region in the face of coups in places like Bolivia. There have been workshops on the misrepresentation of the reality of Latin America today in the British media and in other English-speaking media. Earlier on, a message from Lula was read out to the conference, where he gave his salutations to those here and also gave an update about what was taking place in Brazil and elsewhere in Latin America. There was also a video conference with Noam Chomsky, who offered his assessment of developments in countries like Chile. So there have been many workshops dealing with issues of labor rights in Colombia, the issue of the peace process, the coup in Bolivia, the need for solidarity with countries such as Venezuela, and hundreds of academics, journalists and social movement members have gathered here to express solidarity with Latin America.
That was Pablo Navarrete with that report, and we'll take one last break. Stay with us.
We have been present in all the events stirring our peoples. United for each transmission and in tune, we bet on a new Latin American vision. Now, we're also accompanied by the Caribbean people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Each day working for the best understanding and communication. Tell us more. The news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. The Sidama ethnic group, which represents 4% of Ethiopia's 105 million population, has voted overwhelmingly to form their own self-governing region. According to the country's electoral board, provisional results show that 98.5% of voters backed the change in Wednesday's ballot, with the turnout reaching 99.7%. This will make Hawassa City Ethiopia's 10th self-governing region. Residents will now control taxes, education, security, and certain legislation.
The election has ended peacefully, and that is a good thing. Every ethnicity that lives in the Sidama zone and Hawassa City should coexist peacefully and with respect for each other.
The Neve has declared the results of the referendum across polling stations in Sidama zone. The election outcome indications show the long-standing Sidama struggle has been successfully achieved.
The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has called on Belgium to return historic artifacts which were taken during the colonial era. Felix Tshisekedi was speaking at the official inauguration of the DRC's National Museum in the capital, Kinshasa. More than 12,000 pieces will be displayed tracing the history of the Congolese people, but the largest collection remains at the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Tervuren, Belgium.
It is one thing to demand the Congolese artifacts in Belgium, and another is to conserve them as well. So the idea is there, but it needs to be done progressively. Obviously, it is the Congolese heritage, so one day it will have to come back, but we must do it in an organized manner. We need to recognize that Belgians helped us to conserve it. So we can't just take it all back in one go. We need to be organized. We shall see how we can satisfy the people.
Sudanese farmers have raised concerns over flooding associated with the Blue Nile River, one of the longest in Africa. The phenomenon has caused farmers to lose their crops and their homes. Residents say the river is unpredictable, making it difficult to prepare. This year alone, more than 60 people have been killed and several injured by flash floods from the watercourse. The Blue Nile joins the White Nile in Khartoum and supplies the majority of the Nile's water, which runs through Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea.
The Blue Nile is very unpredictable. One night it will be there, and the next day it will have moved to somewhere else. It rises so fast, so sometimes it floods the plantation before we have time to cut it.
Citizens in Guinea-Bissau will head to the polls on Sunday to elect the country's next president. The closely watched election is expected to bring political stability to the West African nation. This as the country has endured at least 4 successful coups and 16 attempted since independence from Portugal in 1974. Voters will choose between 12 candidates. It is also the first time a sitting president has completed a 5-year term without being ousted.
One of the major challenges was to be able to hold elections on the 24th, and today is the 23rd, and the atmosphere on the ground with a campaign that ended yesterday proves that tomorrow the Guineans will go to the polls.
Namibia is also set to hold presidential and parliamentary elections next week. Geingob is seeking a second and final term in office under his Southwest Africa People's Organization party. Geingob is challenged by 8 other candidates, including Esther Mwinjangwe of the National Unity Democratic Organization. She's the first woman to run for the position in the nation's history. This is the country's 6th election since attaining independence in 1990. And we end with news that at least 9 people have been killed and 22 injured when a car bomb exploded in Syria's Tel Abyad. The border town has experienced heavy fighting since Turkey launched its operation last month. Ankara has so far ceased its offensive after striking deals with Russia and the United States. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the new source from South America and the Caribbean.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursday, only on Telesur.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomen. Monday, only on Telesur.
From here to beyond the South. From here to the Caribbean or further north. Where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington. From Mexico. From Caracas. From Quito. From Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South. Only on Telesur.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dot in the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.